Welcome to episode 9 of The Player and the Journalist with Jillian, Reilly, and David Vick. In this episode, we will be discussing differences between the men's and women's game as it relates to the NCAA tournament. Jillian, episode 9, newly hired at a startup. How's it going?
Yes, very exciting. It's going well. It's been a while, but I've been pretty busy. Lots of, sort of exciting things happening in my life. I did just start a new job. My
Woo-hoo!
first full week. Yeah, my first full week this week. But yeah, it's been really fun. I'm happy to be back here though, discussing lacrosse. It's a nice change of speed for me.
Awesome. And also, we are in December now, so that means Santa Claus is coming to town. Okay. And then we we also had some big lacrosse news. Unfortunately, some sad lacrosse news come out in the last week about Izzy Skane. Any quick thoughts on her missing the upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, it's always so disheartening seeing, any player go down with an ACL injury. I've been fortunate enough not to have to handle something like that, but I've definitely, been by the side of a lot of my teammates who unfortunately have. And, you know, there's never anything that you can say in the moment that's gonna sort of fix that. And, you sort of have to let yourself feel, and I'm sure she's letting herself do that right now. But there comes a time where you wake up one morning, you turn the page, and you just start the recovery process. So, but my heart goes out to her and her family and her teammates. It's never an easy thing to deal with, but knowing her and knowing how much of a stud player she is, we played for the same club team. So, I know she's gonna bounce back and she's gonna be better than ever. So
Play for the same club team. Very interesting
we,
fact. Fun
we
facts
did.
from Jillian. That is
We
very interesting.
did.
Okay.
Shout out Mass Elite. Yeah.
All right. So we are going to start with the roster and bench limit sizes. And this
Yes.
data is from the 2019 NCAA tournament as released. There was a study done, and the IWLCA released some of the findings on their Instagram on November 18th. So I have the numbers in front of me. Okay, so we will start with the roster and bench limits for the D2 and D3 women's lacrosse teams compared to the men's lacrosse teams and the 2019 NCAA tournament, which is where the data is from. So roster sizes, men get 4 more players, 32 compared to 28 for women. The travel party is also 4 more, and so is the bench size. Any initial thoughts on that from you, Jillian? All I will have to say before you answer is makes no sense. That's my only note I have in preparation for this episode. Makes no sense. Go ahead.
No, yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth, honestly. It just, it just sort of makes you think like who's in charge of sort of determining this and why does there have to be a difference? Because, there has been over the past year so many, you know, sort of inequalities between men and women's sports in general. And, the whole NCAA March Madness basketball tournament, that whole scandal came out in terms of, the gender inequality issues in terms of the tournament style there. So, you sort of see that same sort of idea, maybe not as drastic, but you see that same sort of idea in these roster sizes and travel roster capacities. It's just, why do they get a couple more players than we do, and what does that sort of say about the NCAA and what they're sort of trying to get at with that? It's just sort of frustrating as a female athlete to see year after year, in some people's eyes, small changes, but it's really a big change when it comes to talent and how much talent you can bring with you. It makes real differences in the game, so it's definitely frustrating, and I agree with you, it doesn't really make much sense.
For sure. So, in terms of, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, they're all three like blasphemous, but for the roster sizes. So, if the NCAA wants to use the argument that, well, the roster size is bigger, so therefore the travel party and the bench size is bigger. Well, if the roster is bigger, then why can't the women just bring everyone they have? Because I know at Mercer, not everyone makes the travel roster for road games, and it's like that at a lot of schools. So if the rosters are smaller, why don't you just let them bring everyone? You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
I don't understand the reasoning or the logic behind it. I don't really think there is any logic. And even for the travel party, going off my own experience when I was at Mercer 2 years ago, like I traveled with them to all their road games before the season ended because of COVID. So I guess I was part of the travel party. I don't really know. I never really thought of it like that. But I don't see why it's a different number. I just for the life of me, I cannot figure that out.
Yeah. I think too. I think everybody who you bring is technically a part of the travel party. So whether it be trainers, administration, like media staff, I'm pretty sure they're all included in that travel party, which again makes you sort of scratch your head. But um, actually, this past year for us was the first year that we actually had a travel roster. Um, Typically, we had smaller rosters, so we could travel everybody in the past, but this year, we had more people on our team than could fit, and it was hard. And it really does create sort of a divide on the team, and it's a huge culture shift as well because you're telling everybody to show up and work hard and compete every day, but then at the end of the week, if the game's on a weekend, you can't travel everybody. So definitely something that I think is worth sort of looking at and reevaluating in terms of if the rosters are smaller, why not be able to travel everyone, to your point?
Right. And so if men's teams do have larger rosters, which I believe they do, because I believe they have more on scholarship, which is a whole nother topic. But if you're allowing 42 for the men, then just allow 42 for the women. And most teams aren't going to have 42 female players on their team because that's a lot. That's a pretty big number, I would say. So if they don't reach the full 42, well, okay, no big deal. But at least give them that ability for teams like a North Carolina or a Boston College or a Maryland that has a ton of players. Let them go and be a part of it because like you said, not being with the team is kind of a big deal and it's kind of like obviously I'm not a college athlete, so and you didn't experience this because as you said, Boston College just created a travel roster this past season, but I would imagine that's a lonely experience to not be with the team and not to be experiencing that and just to feel left out. So if everyone can go, then let everyone go. I mean, like I said, 42 is a big number. So NCAA, get your junk together because this is stupid.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, yeah, I agree. It just is, and it's definitely frustrating too from like a leadership standpoint. Having to have tough conversations and you know keep people motivated, and there's almost like not much you can say um, to a close teammate. It's one of those things where you sort of have to power through and either let it break you down or let it sort of motivate you to work harder the next week. But anyone, especially who's committed to playing in college, shouldn't have to, in my opinion, battle against the men's league in terms of whether they're able to travel or not. So it's unfortunate.
Absolutely. So honestly, that's all I have to say on it because I feel like there's not much to say. It doesn't make any sense, and it's just like that's how it is. But do you have anything else before we go on to venue capacity?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's just definitely something worth reevaluating, like I said, and there's got to be, I think, at some point, some pull and some leeway. If we're not getting the same amount of scholarships, and why aren't we at least getting the same roster size or roster size in general? So I think there's got to be more of a balance, and people on the board need to work a little bit harder to sort of um, close that gap because right now I think it's super frustrating.
For sure. And shout out to the IWLCA for sharing these findings. Um, and I would just piggyback on what you just said. I feel like coaches really have to push for these changes. They're the ones that are in the power of the coaches. So I feel like those are the ones that need to push for this change. Moving on to venue capacity. This is going to be a very interesting conversation because most people think, oh, just get the biggest venue you can possibly get and play in that. But I don't think that's the best decision. So, what are your thoughts on the venue capacity as it relates to men versus women? For anyone that does not know and has not seen the studies or the study that the IWLCA put out, or just watch men's games on TV versus women's games. The men's teams play in a lot of bigger stadiums, and they're mostly empty for the most part, but they're playing in these big stadiums. So for the 2019 D1 Men's Championship, it was played at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, which is where the Philadelphia Eagles play. The link, okay? pretty big stadium. It has a max capacity of 67,594 people, and it was 46% full in 2019. Okay, 46% full. That's not a really good look on TV when you got half the seats empty. Just gonna throw that out there. Then you have the women's tournament in 2019, which Jillian Reilly was a part of. Absolutely insane. Okay, it was in Baltimore at Homewood Field, where Johns Hopkins University is. It's on the campus. Okay, max capacity 8,500. The total attendance was 106%, so it was over capacity. And you can go back and watch the games. Hit up YouTube, look up North Carolina versus Boston College. The atmosphere was insane, okay? Jillian Riley's gonna have to talk about this because there was standing room only. There were people lining the fences. It was insane, okay? It looked amazing. And guess what? That was with a capacity of 8,500 max, okay? Much smaller stadium, looked much better on TV, and it definitely was a much better atmosphere. So I don't know where I'm going with all this, other than to say that I prefer smaller venues. Jillian, you're on. Take the mic.
Yeah. Well, first off, yeah, that Final Four tournament was probably the craziest out of all of them, in terms of venue and capacity. I think like to your point, the atmosphere was unbelievable, and being able to play on a stage like that surrounded by fans. So they were on both sides, which was sort of different also. Typically, everybody was on one side. And yeah, there was, no open section of the stadium. Everybody, filled the stands. And like you said, people were, standing lining the fence. And it was what a Final Four tournament in anyone's mind is supposed to look and feel like. It was exciting for the players, it was exciting for the fans. Each team had their own massive cheering section, and the fans are going back and forth. So it was super fun to be a part of that whole experience. And to your point, with on the men's side of things, having such a big venue and only filling 46% of
46%.
it. Yeah, it takes away the excitement a little bit, honestly. Might be fun for them to play on a stage that big. But to be honest, I would never have traded that Final Four tournament in Hopkins. It was unbelievable. And I think the more fans, the better. In a smaller venue, I would also choose over any large stadium. And I sort of think back and compare it to my freshman year when we played in Gillette, which was, the last time the men and women's tournament was at the same venue, was my freshman year. And as exciting as that was, for me and other Massachusetts
Patriots fans.
exactly, being able to play in Gillette, it was awesome. But again, in terms of the atmosphere, it just didn't even compare. The fans were farther away from the field. It wasn't even close to being filled. So as much as our neon shirts, try to stand out, it didn't really make too much of a difference, to be honest. So those are sort of some of my initial thoughts. But I think there's definitely more to dissect, but I would also go the smaller venue route.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say, just a quick story about the 2019 Final Four. Watching that on TV, seeing Samuel Puzo's game winner, I called my mom. I was like, Mom, I got to go to Baltimore. Okay, I got to go to watch this championship game. I had a 2007 Ford 500. It wasn't 2007, kind of old at the time. So, and it wasn't the best car. It had some issues with it. I was like, Mom, I got to go to Baltimore. I have got to see this game. Okay. And so she was like, I will let you take my car if you can find someone to go with you. I called my friend, no one could go. Screw them all. Okay. So long story short, I couldn't go to the game, but oh my gosh, I wanted to. I wanted to so bad. My stomach started hurting. I wanted to go so bad. So anyways, it's probably a good thing I didn't. I would have been in the stands crying. But anyways, that atmosphere made me want to be there so badly. And I don't even like going to sports games because I feel like, why go to them in person? You can watch them on TV, see the replays, enjoy some AC, go to the bathroom without waiting in line. But anyways, that atmosphere was insane. I wanted to be a part of it so badly. So anyways, amazing atmosphere. Going
Yes.
back to the men's, so 46% full, quick math, somewhere around 33,000 people there, which is a lot of people. That is great. But imagine if you put 33,000 fans, talking about for the men's, if you put 33,000 fans in a venue that can hold 31,000, that's going to look a whole lot better, and the atmosphere is going to be a whole lot better than it is playing at these NFL stadiums. They go between, like you said, Gillette Stadium. They play where the Eagles play. They play in Baltimore where the Ravens play. They go back and forth between these stadiums, and they're half empty. It's like that doesn't look good for TV. People don't want to advertise when it's half empty. But then if you go to a smaller stadium like Homewood Field, oh my gosh, you can't see a seat anywhere. Everyone, it's packed. That looks great. That's the atmosphere. And with the smaller venues, like you said, the fans are more on top of the players. They're more on top of the game. They can influence the game more. Bring in the nerves, baby. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me why these people in charge do not choose the smaller venues. And to go, okay, never mind. Go ahead.
No, I just have a couple of thoughts on that. I think, in terms of the nerves and the excitement, everybody's goal is to make it to that tournament, at the end of the season, and a huge part of it, and feeling, that you have finally made it to the big stage and you're there, is the atmosphere of the stadium. If you compare it to even like the conference tournaments, like the ACC tournament, not never as nearly as big of a crowd as the Final Four tournament, but you sort of, as a player, like, you dream of that moment. And although nerves are a factor, I think it's more excited nerves than sort of mental nerves. And I just sort of remember looking up and taking it all in, enjoying the moment, but also just staying focused and sort of using it to fuel as opposed to sort of break you down. But yeah, as a player, it was unbelievable. It was such a fun experience. Definitely wouldn't have traded it, but yeah, I know you still have some more thoughts on that, so.
Like I said, I have a lot to say about this. When it comes to the postseason in any sport, it's all about the atmosphere. The atmosphere is what gives you the energy. It's what gives fans the nerves. Oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Oh my gosh, Sam Puzo just hit the game mode. That's what just happened. Anyways, the atmosphere, it creates all the energy. If you were to take that Sam Puzo game winner, just because we're focusing on the 2019 numbers, if you took that Sam Puzo game winner and you put it in Gillette Stadium, and there's 8,500 people there, it's not going to be remembered like it was. It's just, in my opinion, the atmosphere, seeing the fans go berserk, seeing that the thrill of victory versus the agony of defeat, like, that's what makes moments so crazy. And no matter what the sport is, you can go any sport you want, the thrill of victory versus the agony of defeat. We feel for the people that lose. We're happy for the people that win. Obviously, fan base is a little different story, but as unbiased journalists, that's how it is. So the atmosphere is everything. If Boston College in Maryland, was it not Maryland, Boston College in North Carolina played that semifinal at Gillette Stadium and it's half full, I'm gonna be watching on TV. This is crazy, but I'm not gonna want to be there. When it's standing room only and they're just packed in there, man. I want to be there. I want to be a part of that. I want to be at the concessions. Give me a Coke. So I just feel like the atmosphere is everything, 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 everything.
Yes.
And let's see, another point on this that I wanted to point out, two things. So the PLL, the Professional Lacrosse, Premier Lacrosse League, Professional.
Yep.
I focus on women's lacrosse. Anyways, so they have these massive stadiums that they've been going to for a few years now, and they're never full. I'm just like, it doesn't make any sense to me. It just does not. Versus the WPLL, when that was still a thing, we went to these small venues. We played at Yale. We played at a local travel tournament. And while there might not have been 20,000 people there, or even 8,000, the venues, the atmospheres were really good because you got the fans all in there in the standing room only. And if you go back and look at the U.S. women's national team, when they played in Texas a few weeks ago, and there were fans all around the field, and the players were just like you could just tell it was a different kind of atmosphere. And
Mhm.
you don't need to be in these monstrous stadiums with flies and dust on the seats. You don't need that. Go to these small venues, pack them out. It looks better on TV, creates a better atmosphere. If it looks better on TV, you're going to bring in more advertising. Okay. You're going to, if people see it on TV, oh, this is sold out. That's interesting. This must be pretty popular. Versus if it's half empty, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Mhm.
It blows my freaking mind.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think you made a good point about, everyone's obviously coming to watch the athletes play, but I think, when you think of sports from a broader perspective, everybody's a part of that story. So, the fans are coming to get the full experience. They're coming to watch their favorite players, but they're coming to be a part of the hype. They're coming to, be a part of the suspense of the game, the ups and the downs. And yeah, I think you make a lot of good points in terms of it, drawing more attraction on TV and people wanting to be there from home and getting more people to tune in when they see such packed stadiums. But I think overall, in terms of trying to grow the sport and specifically women's sport, I think, they stick to these smaller venues and they try to pack it. And, obviously COVID is still a factor these days, which is unfortunate. But definitely once we're through with this pandemic, I think that's sort of the route that they ought to take in terms of just growing the sport and making it just as fun for the players, the coaches, the fans, everybody involved. So hopefully they sort of fall back to that Homewood Fields experience in terms of sort of constructing these next venue capacities for the Final Four tournaments to come.
For sure. So I have a question for you. I have actually, let's see. Yes, I have one question for you, and then I have another point. But
Yeah.
just going off what you just said, you really summed it up. It's about when you're in person, it's about the experience. Because I think anyone, especially nowadays, TVs are so good, the cameras are so good. You can view the game better on TV than you can in person. You can see it up close when the ball's on the other side of the field versus if you're in person, you can't really see that. So the whole point of going to a sporting event in person is the experience. The atmosphere is that's the experience. When since you're from Boston, yeah, you go to Red Sox games and they're singing Sweet Caroline. You're not going to be singing that from your living room. You sing it from your seat, okay?
Yeah.
So the experience is everything. The fan experience is everything. Just everything.
Hmm.
Okay? And then I wanted to point out that the championship venues have already been locked in through 2026. Okay? Were you aware of this?
I think so. I forget where they are though.
Okay, so in 2022, it's going back to Homewood Field after being at Johnny Unitas Stadium at Towson. In 2023 and 2024, it's going to Wake Med Soccer Park in Cary, North Carolina, which is about an hour and a half from University of North Carolina. Had to look it up, never heard of it. It looks like a nice venue, looks pretty compact, never heard of it. I'll just leave it at that. And then in 2025 and 2026, it's going to Gillette Stadium again. Okay, I'm just not a fan of that. I just got to be honest, just not a fan of that. But anyways, so I wanted to point out that Homewood Field, obviously mentioned earlier, has a capacity of 8,500 people. Wake Med Soccer Park has a capacity of 10,000. So in 2023 and 2024, that will be interesting to see. Can we get an extra 2,000 fans there and sell it out? So I think that will be an interesting viewpoint on the growth of the sport. It obviously depends what teams are there.
Hmm.
I mean, if North Carolina's in the Final Four and it's in North Carolina, they're going to get a lot of North Carolina fans. If North Carolina's not in the Final Four, that's going to affect attendance. So there are variables that affect this, but that will be very interesting. Any thoughts on those venues and where might you want to see a national championship played?
Yeah. So I think, obviously they're trying to tailor to different regions and, obviously different fan bases, which I think is awesome. Um, but I think it is a little strange in terms of venue capacity, how different they all are. And having played in so many different um venues, Homewood Field being one of them, Gillette Stadium being one of them. Even sophomore year, thinking back to like Stony Brook, which was also another very small venue and created such a fun atmosphere. It's interesting to see, why they would make changes after seeing Final Four atmospheres such as the 2019 Homewood Field one. They are going back there again, but again, if you see, such great turnouts year after year, why change it back to somewhere like Gillette? There are other stadiums, up here in New England that I think would be awesome. Even something like Harvard Stadium, the Coliseum, or BU Stadium. I played a couple state championships there in high school, and it was awesome. So it's thinking of little places like that. Again, to fall back on our point of just being able to pack the stadium. I think, Gillette, I know the fan bases are growing, so maybe it will be more full than it was my freshman year. So we'll have to see, but it's definitely different. There's a lot of differences, I feel like, across the board with those venues. So it'll be interesting to see what the turnouts are like.
For sure. So I like the point you said. They're trying to kind of tailor, or not tailor, but put the championship game in different regions. Obviously, everything right now is on the East Coast, which I feel like it should be. Um, but it's kind of like you said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Okay,
Mhm.
2019, the best atmosphere, just amazing. I understand they have contracts with these stadiums, and obviously stadiums are they're high in demand with concerts, sporting events. Um, there's all sorts of stuff that goes on, so they do have to book these at least a few years in advance. But I hope that they seriously take into consideration the size of the venue, because I think it would be good for it to rotate, just like it does in college football. For example, they rotate between like 4 or 5 different stadiums. It's just a different one each year, but it's the same 4 or 5.
Mhm.
Um, so it'll be interesting, but you kind of just answered this. But if you could give me one answer on where do you want to see the national championship played, if you could choose one venue, what would it be? And this, we'll wrap it up with this.
That's a good question. I
It could
think
be anywhere, any venue, any sport. United
anywhere.
States based, obviously.
Hmm. So I feel like there's a lot that goes into this because obviously I want to say somewhere different, like not on the East Coast, because I feel like that's typically where they fall, but that's also where most
The
of the
fans
fan
are.
bases
Yeah,
as well. And since we've been talking about atmosphere, this this whole time would be a little bit off to go someplace in the Midwest or the West Coast. So if I had to choose, let's see, a place to have the national championship. I mean, I know this is biased, but I'm just thinking like Alumni Stadium at BC would be unreal. Like the stadium's huge. They could
but it's
fit
not too huge.
yeah, exactly. It's not too huge. Um, I think it would be, just thinking of when like football games are packed, it's just like it's almost just like sort of electrifying the sound because I'm comparing it to like Homewood Field, and that was crazy. But I think Alumni also has like an extra like balcony layer higher. So I think it would offer up some more capacity there. So I think that would be awesome. But also, again, I already said it, but Harvard Coliseum I think would be a sort of a different change of pace, and also really awesome in terms of that stadium feel, having, the higher balconies and having fans. But again, not being bigger than Gillette. I think that's almost too big. So I'm gonna go BC or Harvard.
Very interesting. So I cannot fault you for saying Alumni Stadium, because I actually thought of that before we came on, because I was thinking Gillette. Well, what's a stadium that's not as big as Gillette? Alumni Stadium. And it, like, I've never been there, but it seems like it's fairly compact, based on what I've seen. So I have a venue for you, and it is in the Midwest. Okay, you
Okay.
said no Midwest, but I think that come Final Four time, the fans will travel, especially if
Mhm.
you have the blue bloods of the sport in there.
That's true.
Okay,
Yep.
so My dream venue right now, if I could pick one, if I could choose it, if I was in charge, we're
Okay.
heading to Northwestern and we're playing that national championship right on the water, baby. That's where we're playing it. I don't care if it's snowing. I don't care. Well, it would be summer, so it wouldn't be snow. But right on the water, okay. I think that would be amazing. That would be. Oh, I'm an artsy person, right? I love me a good picture. Oh, put that. Just get a little panorama, frame it. Okay, that's going in the crib because that would be a beautiful image. I would. Oh my gosh. Okay, it's a pretty new complex. Northwestern has amazing facilities. Go follow Northwestern and ULAX on Instagram if you don't believe me. They're always posting about them. Oh, it's beautiful. Um, it's a small venue. I went and looked it up. Okay, so the permanent seating max is only 2,000, which is a little low, but I think that you could add. Not I think. I know that they could add temporary seating just like they did at Homewood with the extra bleachers, and it wouldn't. I mean, I don't know. It wouldn't be 10,000 people, but man, it would look good. I'll tell you that much. It would look good. So
I can't disagree with that. Yeah, I think that would be picture perfect. And sort of a different change of pace. But yeah, Northwestern does have some good facilities. That field house they just built, unbelievable. I actually never got to play on that field outside.
I know y'all played on the indoor stadium, right?
Well, but we played inside in the field house.
That was a very high scoring game.
Very high scoring. Yeah, it was.
Where's your defense, Jillian?
Yeah, I know, right? Oh
Crease
God.
slide right now.
There you go. Yeah, too long ago. I don't even really remember. But yeah, that was awesome. They have some great facilities, and I think that field would make for an awesome Final Four tournament. And to your point, some awesome pictures with that background. So can't
There might
disagree.
be some there might be some marriage proposals going on in the crowd.
Honestly, post game proposal. Why not?
Yeah, so that would be my dream stadium. All right, so any final thoughts before we put a bow on our 9th episode on this December day of 2021?
I know. Yeah, it's crazy. It's the 9th episode. But no, yeah, I mean, I think, we talked about some great things. I think we raised some pretty valid points. I hope that, in terms of back to our first conversation about roster sizes and travel rosters, I hope, maybe not next year, but a couple years down the line, we start to see that gap close, just in terms to make the men and women's game a little bit more equal there. But yeah, I think, and then moving on to venue capacities and Final Four experiences, I think there are tailoring to different regions and with the moving of the venues. But yeah, I think the atmosphere and creating that full experience for everyone is really important. But I think we had a good conversation, and hopefully somebody listening out there will sort of hear our thoughts and continue the conversation also.
For sure. Just got to keep getting changed year by year. Other than
Exactly.
some of these wacky rule changes, what the? Okay. Anyways, that
The
is
little thing.
episode. That is episode 9, folks. We will be back either later this month or in 2022.